Hey guys, doing Yu-Gi-Oh! Q&A number 8 today. Got a lot of great questions, so I'm going to get right into it. But first off, a few people have asked me about decks on this series. Just to let you guys know, I do take deck requests. If you do have a deck request for me, please post on my deck request video. I'll put a little annotation in the video if you haven't seen it already. I only take deck requests through that page just because I get a ton of deck requests, and it's just really hard to keep track of them unless people post on that page. So if you do have a deck request, please post there and I'll take a look at it. I won't take any deck requests through this series. And now for this week's questions. Simply Yu-Gi-Oh! Asked me a few questions. I think I might start limiting it to like 2 questions per person, just, maybe as the series starts to get popular, but we'll see. Not too sure about that. But first off, he asked me, how do you play kind of against a large amount of back row? The interesting thing about back row is that, nowadays we don't have Heavy Storm, we don't have, Giant Trunade or anything like that, and people are usually running 3 MST. It really depends on how you want to deal with it. There's a lot of things you have to keep in mind. Keep in mind that your opponent, if they're smart, they might set cards that are not necessarily traps to try to bait you, because we don't, have Heavy Storm anymore. It's not a big deal to do that. So think about that. Don't always worry as much about traps, but definitely think about it. If you really hate back row, play a deck that can deal with it easily, like Kinstellars or Evil Swarm or something. If you're running a deck like he's running, I'm guessing Gen X, which relies on, specific synchros, you might want to run Forbidden Lance, things like that protect your individual monsters. Trap Stun is good when you're going for big plays in those type of decks. If you really, really hate back row, run Royal Decree and try to not run traps. But you just have to deal with it. I mean, that's the game for the most part, unless they bring Heavy Storm back. So you just have to deal with it. Think about what you need to do to deal with back row. Try to play monsters that have abilities to stop traps or to stop certain things. And, run more MST, run more things to deal with it. Run Dark Bribe or 7 Tools if you really want to. Run 3 MST if you want to. It's all in, how much you want to deal with it. Expect back row. Try not to swarm too much. I know that might be a crazy idea to some people, not to swarm too much, but if you swarm so much and get blown up by Mirror Force or something, you're in a lot of trouble. So definitely be patient and try to understand when you need to go in, and that's kind of how you can deal with back row for the most part. But there's no unlimited way around it unless you're running a deck that can deal with it very, very easily. He also just asked me a quick question, about his own deck testing and how he can kind of deal with getting rid of their stuff when he's running up against a deck that keeps bringing out stuff. And yeah, back row is really the way to deal with that. It depends on the deck. Certain back row deals with certain decks. If you have a deck that is swarming and special summoning a lot, there are other things to deal with that, like Max C and cards that limit special summoning, like Vanity's Emptiness and all kinds of stuff. So it depends on what you're going up against. But if you're running a deck again like he is that is losing its cards that he works so much to get out, things like Forbidden Lance, like I said earlier with back row, that's how you can deal with that. He also asked me about Arc V. That's the new anime that is, I believe, just aired. I don't keep track that much. I'm pretty behind on the anime. I've only seen GX and the original. I've seen all of them, all the episodes in those 2 series, and I've seen some of 5D's, but not very much. I feel like the anime gets worse as it goes on from my experience, but that might just be me, I'm not as interested in the story of the anime. I just like the cards and the archetypes and things like that, and what I could steal from the show in decks. But yeah, that's my personal opinion. So I haven't seen Arc V, so I'll have to, see when I eventually get to that sometime in the future. I watch a lot of other TV, so it's hard for me to have time to watch it in between everything I do. So Stephen Goodwin asked me about his level deck. He's doing like a Mystic Swordsman or whatever, Silent Swordsman, like kind of a mixed deck, I think, when I took a look at it. So I haven't tried that deck before, so I can kind of just give general advice when you're making a level deck. Level decks require kind of stalling. They require ways to build up their cards. You really need to search out those lower leveled monsters. So if you have cards like Mystic Tomato or Mass Dragon, I'm just saying like examples that search out cards that you can stall out to bring out those low monsters to eventually upgrade. If you need to destroy monsters by battle, run something like Shrink. It's tough. Level monsters take some time to get going, which can't really compete with faster decks. Again, definitely run Level Up like you are running. I think that's necessary to speed up those decks. Even though it requires card combos, I still think it's necessary these days. but that's just kind of generally what I can say. You might want to run stalling cards like Wabaku and Threatening Roar. I believe he is running Threatening Roar, so that's good. But specifically about that deck, I really can't give too specific advice until I build it myself. So Ryan Woodward asked me about what I think the most underrated deck of this format is or will be. It's hard for me to completely say because I don't stay like 100% in tune with the meta, but I really think that Sylvans are very underrated just because I think that they require so much work to understand and get good at that if someone really took the time to really get good with Sylvans, I think they could have a lot of potential just because they have so much control. You know, a deck that controls their cards and their graveyard and everything on the field, and in addition has a lot of really good plays. I just think it has a lot of potential, especially they're getting more support, so I think down the line we'll definitely see them becoming a strong deck. I have a lot of fun playing them, even though they're a lot of work, so I would definitely like to see in the future them getting stronger, and that's my prediction, but it could be way off. He also asked me about what my favorite older archetype that I wish got more support. I'm probably going to go with the staple answer that most people would say, which would be Toons. Toons could definitely use great support, and they could become a very strong deck if they do get that support. If they do get that support, everyone will hate them because they're sort of like they're sort of like ghost tricks that everyone hates ghost tricks, that they kind of do direct damage, but I think with the right cards, they can still be a strong deck without annoying the hell out of everyone. So I would definitely like to see more support for Toons. There's a lot of other decks I would like to see support for, but that's just one of the examples. And then David Wolford asked me what are the reasons I became a YouTuber and what got me into Yu-Gi-Oh! And deck building. So I'm just going to approach that from all the different angles. The reason I started making content, which is really the reason I became a YouTuber, because I made content before YouTube was around. I guess there's 3 reasons. I started making content because first off, it's fun. I just enjoy it. I like making, like using my creativity and creating something out of it. Second off, it was always one of the big reasons was always about helping people. Always, doing things that would just help out people, make them understand things in relation to games. It's always been like that. If you look on my YouTube history, the first few videos I did were like Zelda videos, but they were like Zelda videos where I got like all the items and stuff like that. So they weren't like a traditional like let's play. They were just like kind of like a guide for people to get like everything in the game. So coming from my perspective, it's like a way I can help people. And I think going forward in my Yu-Gi-Oh stuff and this Q&A series and all that stuff, it just comes from a place of trying to help people out. And that's why, I have my contact info stuff. I think that's a huge part of why I make content. And just thirdly, I just think the stuff I do is interesting. I think it could be seen from some people as cool and that people will enjoy it. So that's the third reason that I make content and why I'm doing my stuff on YouTube. But he also asked me what got me into Yu-Gi-Oh! I started playing Yu-Gi-Oh! When it came out. So, I don't know what my reasoning was when I was a kid. I just thought it was fun and interesting. I'm sure I played Pokemon and whatever card games before that. So at the time it was just a hot card game and it was really, really fun. Even though most of the time I was just screwing around with decks that made no sense and just using every random card that I had. But it was really fun, and I still think that's part of the reason. Obviously nowadays it's much, much different, but it still holds true that the game is extremely fun and has a lot going for it and a lot of different things going on that are unpredictable and make the game interesting. And deck building just kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of the other things I already said that I think it can help people out. I think it's fun. I definitely do agree that it can be a challenge sometimes. I don't necessarily make decks because it's a challenge. That's just part of it. I just like having a lot of different decks. I like trying out things. When it comes to any game, I like experiencing everything the game has to offer. And when it comes to a card game, the only way to do that is to make every deck possible, which is almost impossible. But in order to do that, in order to experience everything that the game has to offer, you have to try out all these decks and see what every card can do. That's the only way to do it. And that to me is so interesting and so fun to, be behind the deck that you're playing. When you're playing someone else, you'll see them play a deck that's really cool and interesting, and you might think, wow, I really want to try that deck. And that that thought, that when you have that, that's me all the time. So I just keep making decks over and over and over again to keep being that person that says, wow, I really want to try that. So it just goes on and on for me, and that's kind of how I am with the game in general. And finally, Troll Reaper is new to XYZs, and he just wants me to kind of go over which XYZs he should use most and which ones that he should be worried about. I think the ones that you should use most and the ones you should be worried about are synonymous. Those should go hand in hand, because the ones that you should be worried about are the ones that you'll see the most often that you should be using. For this, I'm just going to go talk about generic ones. I'm not going to talk about archetype specific or class or archetype or attribute specific or type specific, because that's just too much. If you want me to go into that stuff, you can ask about that, but that comes from experiencing those certain decks. So I thought the best way to do this would be just to go from level 1 to level 8, which are the most common ones, and talk about the specific ones that you'll see the most often. Try to do this as quick as possible, because this might take a little while. So for 1-stars, Slacker Magician for stalling, usually most popular. Utopia Roots is a new one that's really, really good. Ghost Trick Doulahan you'll see. For 2-stars, usually Gachi Gachi you'll see a lot for stalling. Daigusto is kind of the stronger beater for 2-stars. 3-stars, Zenmain's hands down one of the best stalling cards in the game. If you're running 3-stars, definitely run that. Leviathan and Leviathan get run a lot. There's a lot of other 3-stars that are interesting, but not as common as those. 4-star XYZs are where things just, go crazy because everyone runs 4-stars. The best ones for 4-stars are Exciton Knight, Silent Honor, Maystroke, Gagaga Cowboy, very popular because you can win matches with that one. Utopia used to be popular, but not as much anymore. Photon can be a really nice, popular one. Lavalo Chain if you're using graveyard stuff. There's a lot of 4-star ones. Abyss Dweller to go against graveyard stuff. There's pretty common ones, but I think those are probably the ones you'll see the most often. 5-stars. 5-stars are really good. You'll see Volcasaurus, Terrace, Zenmayo. 5-stars tend to be very, very aggressive, so they have very nice destruction capabilities. 6-stars, not too many great 6-stars. Photon Strike Bouncer, Constellar Ptolemy, very popular ones. You can see Gauntlet Launcher sometimes, but 6-stars aren't like that amazing. 7-stars are some of the best ones. Very strong. Usually you'll see Big Eye, can be a very, very nice one, and Dracosac are usually the best ones. Some people run some other interesting ones, but those are the most common ones. And finally, 8-stars. Pretty much Felgrand is probably the best one. Heretic Sun Dragon, maybe also Galaxy Eyes Tachyon Dragon. Those 3 are really the crazy ones you have to worry about. There's a bunch of other interesting ones, but those are definitely the ones you'll probably see the most. But again, if you do have more questions about specific XYZs, maybe for your specific deck, I can definitely address that. But those tend to be the ones you'll see most often for those levels. So those are the questions I got this week. Thank you to everyone who asked me questions. If you do have a question for me, post below in the comments, or you can send me a message on Twitter. You can tweet me. Either way, I definitely really like doing the series and answering people's questions and trying to help them out. You can ask me about rulings. You can ask me about decks and discussing certain cards or anything like that. You can ask me about stuff outside the game if you wish as well. Anything you guys can think of, I'll do my best to try to answer and help people out. Also, just letting you guys know, Dragons of Legend will come out soon. Not sure of the exact date, sometime in April. So when all those cards get confirmed, I will be doing a video, probably multiple videos, on all those cards coming out to try to talk about them and discuss, what's interesting about that pack in specific. But, as always, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next week.